Welcome back to another episode of Your Big Career Move, where I talk to people about their extraordinary career changes in the hope that it inspires you to make a change as well, if that's what you choose. And today I'm here with Jules Mitra, who's got a cool story to tell. He was a teacher, and then along the way, something changed, a few things changed, and now he is the master of his own destiny. He runs his own business, and I won't spoil it, but. Should we talk about, well, let's talk about, first of all, why you even got into teaching.
That's that's a good question. I got into teaching because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and actually, honestly, in some ways, I still don't. I went to university. I studied history and politics. My girlfriend at university happened to come from a teaching family, and she was studying English. When she got to the end of her, well, when we got to the end of our degrees, her family encouraged her to go and do a PGCE. And he said to me, "Well, why don't you do a PTC as well? It's kind of like doing an MA, except you get paid for it." And of course, there was a stipend or whatever. I mean, it's a tiny amount of money, but for me, it was like riches galore to stay in education a bit longer and try and work out what I wanted to do. And of course, that's my PGCE. And that kind of railroad, you're very much in the education world at that point. It's all about kind of classroom management, pedagogy, learning theories, and of course you end up in schools and so suddenly I was into a career I hadn't really anticipated or planned it, but
So,
that's where I
yeah,
started.
interesting. Quick question for you then, because this is really fresh on my mind because I've just been speaking to students at the University of Bath about their career. And,
Cool.
and I remember when I was a student, in my early 20s, late teens, whatever, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, career-wise. And, some of them had very clear ideas of what they wanted to do, and some of them had no idea. And for some people, I think that's quite a scary prospect, not knowing what they want to do. Do you remember how it felt for you? Did you feel scared by it, or were you just like, well, it's just one of those things, I'll just bumble along, or I'm asking you to cast your mind back quite far.
Yes. No, and I do remember, and actually it was scary. I kind of felt I had to make a success of my life. I remember for this pressure that I had to be successful, whatever that means. Um, but no idea what that looked like or which way I should be heading in. So it was a very unnerving experience, and it was for years as well. I mean, I have to say, I'm incredibly proud to have been a teacher. I feel that I've achieved so much as a teacher, and actually, it's also been one of the best schools of life for me too, as a teacher. So I don't regret it, and I'm very proud of my experience there. However, throughout that time, I was always kind of like, am I in the right space? Am I doing the right thing? Should I kind of be doing something else? And I had lots of fantasies about lots of other things, like I'm pretty musical. Should I be in a band? Should I be exploring that a bit more and kind of pursuing that? Should I kind of go into acting? I think there's definitely a performative element to my personality, right? So
Mm.
that kind of reared its head up a lot, and teaching tapped into that a bit, but of course I wanted it to be bigger.
Yeah.
And so throughout that whole period, there's part of me kind of going, well, do I pursue something creative? Do I pursue something that kind of got financial ability? Should I kind of go into something that's kind of got financial reward? And my family, my parents who ran their own business and very financially motivated themselves, um, were very insistent that I should actually probably be trying to make as much money as I possibly could. So I was very
What did they want
conflicted.
you to do beyond making money? What were they sort of, were
No,
they
that's it.
guiding you into just make money, however you do it?
Yeah. Oh, you wouldn't be a success until you made lots of money. And
Mm.
actually, I think it's kind of funny. One of the reasons I was a teacher partly was like, no, it's not. That's not the thing that's important.
Mm.
To me at
It's like a
least.
rebellion almost.
Yes, it was. It was like actually this is a service. I mean, my attitude changed a bit more now that I'm getting a bit older. I'm like, actually, I do need to make some money at some point, and that's a transition that's happened in this last 7 years, I guess. It's not happened yet, but it's on its way, I hope. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a real battle between I think societal expectations, what my parents wanted, what do I really want.
Mm.
Um, I can remember that very clearly. It's fortunately it is a long time ago.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, not that long ago.
but
Three or four
I
years.
don't, I yeah, a couple, handful. But I remember the struggle. I
Yeah.
don't, I
And
don't
it's
envy.
interesting, isn't it? Because I think
The,
a lot of people, if their children said, "Oh, I want to be a teacher," I mean, it's a noble profession. It's it certainly has in the past been a very respectable profession. I think it still is. Other people might dispute that. Um, So actually, perhaps your parents could have been like, "Oh, this is a great career choice for you, Jules."
Yes, and actually a lot of my colleagues, their parents were like that. It was kind of one of those things where I was the odd one out in that sense. I think other
Mm.
people's parents were like very proud that they kind of gone into that profession. Mine were telling me the whole time to get out of it and go make some proper money.
Interesting. Interesting. It's funny, isn't it, how those things that our parents, the things that our parents tell us, how they influence us and where they're gonna, sort of agree with them and go, okay, that's the path you think I should
Yes,
take, or I'm just gonna rebel against whatever you tell me to do. It's quite interesting, isn't it,
yes,
how we're
it
motivated?
is. And it's kind of interesting looking back at the journey of life and how it kind of leads us to where we go,
Yeah,
without an awareness of where that outcome is.
yeah. So how long
So
were you a teacher in total? Were you teaching secondary school? Must have been.
I was, oh, good question. So actually, I was trained as a secondary teacher. Majority of my teaching was at secondary. I started back in the early 2000s, and I taught altogether for just under 15 years.
Gosh.
Um, and I taught, I'm I lived in the Bath area from the time I finished my degree with my PhD in Bristol, and then ended up living distance in Bath and teaching in Frome from 2002 to about 2009, 10. And at that point, broke up with my ex. And again, I kind of my life decisions had always been kind of following her. So she kind of became a teacher. She got a job in the Bath area, which is why we moved here. I came along after. And when we broke up, I'd kind of been wanting to get out teaching for a couple of years by that point because I was just like, I'm ready to do something else. I'm ready to kind of
Why was
explore
that?
something
What was
else.
it that was making you think you wanted to get out of teaching?
Couple of things really. I feel very privileged. I kind of feel I kind of came to teaching at very kind of at the pinnacle of the teaching experience where it was started to become a bit more rigorous. I think there's in the late 90s, early 2000s, I think a bit more rigorous coming to teaching, but it was still fundamentally about education, and
Hmm.
educationalists were kind of like the key determinants in, particularly in the school I ended up in. You know, I had a headmaster who I would define as an educationalist.
Hmm.
He wanted to have young teachers coming in who are committed to working with students and not just in the academic sense, but across the board, they could contribute to music, to sports, to drama, all of those kind of extracurricular activities. And so I kind of turned up where in a school which actually was very, I think, dynamic,
Hmm.
very student focused, and yeah, had a lot of I think inspirational teachers around me, both older teachers, more experienced ones, but also younger ones. And actually, it's kind of funny because at the time I didn't really, I think, respect the head I had um, as much as I probably do now. Um, he was kind of just a bit of a funny, wizened old chap in some ways to me. But I'm now like, actually, no, you had it right. You kind of knew what you were doing, and it was about kind of giving space to those people to kind of empowering them to do the best job they could. And
Why
he
did
left.
you not
Sorry,
think that when you were there?
I think I was young and I don't know. It's that probably slight arrogance of youth as well. He seemed a bit older, school, and um, I don't know. Actually, it's a good question. I think it's a lack of context as well. I mean,
Mm.
what I did is afterwards, I taught. I have had several head teachers who were just very either micromanaging, very kind of cold, and I think didn't see the human element of teaching like a lot of professions is very much based on the relationship and the personal. And I had several heads who it was all about creating results no matter what. So even though that meant kind of screwing people over, even that meant cheating a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of that going on. So kind of working with kids to coursework multiple times until they get it right, or
Mm.
narrowing the curriculum right down and just focusing on the things that are definitely going to come up in the exam. It's traction. And I think I only realized that after he'd gone.
Yeah.
Actually, he wasn't about that at all. He was like, we get good results, of course, and we have to do our best, and that you're held accountable for that. But actually, I want these kids to turn out be happy, well-rounded human beings, and that means having a much more holistic approach to education.
Yeah.
And I did. I thought all TED teachers were like that until I realised they weren't.
This is it. You don't know when you've only experienced
Yes,
one dynamic, I guess, one scenario, one situation. It's really hard to
yes,
know what it looks like on the other side. So,
exactly.
so going back to why you wanted to quit, why you wanted to get out
Yes.
of teaching.
Yes, I kind of I've done 7, 8 years, and I was getting to the point, and of course, actually, this is a cultural shift which I think has only continued ever since. So this is by the late 2000s, and I was getting more competent, of course. As I started, I was a pretty green, rosy-eyed young teacher, and as time gone on, I'd become more confident. I kind of knew what I was doing. My classroom discipline had improved, and all that kind of stuff. And like I think all professionals, I'm just like, I want to get on with this. Give me the space to get on with it, and I'll do a great job. And of course, what's coming down more and more from top down was actually this is how a lesson should be structured, and this is what you should do. And actually, you can't just record data this way. You have to do it this way. And it became I was becoming more and more concerned that I spent more time trying to prove that I was doing my job than doing my job. Um, and there was always a point where, like, if anybody asked me, well, can you tell me about this kid in this class or where they're at right now? I could just tell you. I could just tell you. But then to spend hours and hours putting it down in multiple different formats and so on, I was just like, not this is not the way to be. And one
Mm.
of the other things I noticed, which concerned me a lot, and again, I'm always about people first and foremost. I'm all about kind of I'm an educationist because I want to help young people become their best selves. It's about empowerment. And part of that is also having the emotional space to be able to respond to things. So one of the things that I was really good at is I could walk into a classroom and I could immediately see the kids who are struggling with something or another, whether that's learning difficulty, whether it's something going on in their personal lives. I could see it. And I wanted to give myself space to engage with those kids and support them. And I think it helps that I came from a pretty tumultuous childhood myself. It really helped, I think, with that empathy
Yeah.
and just being able to spot that.
Yeah.
Um, but what I realized as time was going on, was the pressure was increasing. There's all this extra kind of demands on your time, and because of that, the emotional space that I had to see kids and respond to their needs was diminishing. So, for example, if I had a kid who wasn't performing the way I'd expect because they were either very distracted or something, in my early years, I'd be like, let's have a chat. What's going on? But invest in them. And I realized by the end of that period of time, I was starting to get frustrated because they weren't kind of like going at the speed. And that I realized was not me
Mm.
not being caring as much. It's because actually there's so much pressure and stress on me being put on me that my ability to be emotionally available and present was diminishing. And I got to the point of going, I don't know if I want to be part of a system which I'm complicit. That was my fact. That's always been my thing. If I'm in a situation which I think is dysfunctional, toxic, I'm like, I either change it or I'm complicit. And in that situation, I was thinking, no, I'm not able to change this. This is a much bigger thing than I can deal with
Yeah.
or change. I can work in my own space, which I've been doing, but actually
It's
fundamentally, I feel I'm in a structure which I think disempowers rather than empowers, and
yeah.
that's
It's
not something
not
I'm interested
uncommon.
in.
I do hear this quite a lot from teachers that they feel exactly what you've just really beautifully summarized, that they've gone into the profession because they want to help,
Yes,
and then they feel like over time that ability is taken away from them because they're being dragged into doing admin and a whole host of other things that
yes,
actually, well, this isn't really why I got into this job. So they
yes,
sort of are disillusioned, and I think that's partly why there's such a mass exodus from teaching at the moment, which really saddens me actually on a personal note, because I know
yeah,
lots of really amazing teachers who love what they do, who are really good at what they do. They're so
yes,
passionate about their subjects, but also the kids. I mean, the kids are always the number one thing that come up in these conversations. And they're leaving because they are so disillusioned. So it makes me really sad. But anyway,
yes.
so
And
yeah, go on, sorry.
no, I was going to say, I mean, the other thing which I think is really important that I learned in teaching or during my time as a teacher is there's what I call the tangibles and the intangibles. Um, and what we tend to do, the more we try and control things, the more we try and measure things, the more we can move towards the tangibles, the measurable things. Things that are really important to me tend to always be the intangible things, the things you
Yeah,
can't measure, the
yeah,
relationships, the well-being, the confidence, the ability to explore, take risks. And of course, that to me is what I feel education's done. It's moved more and more to, well, we can measure this, so let's focus on this more. And that to me was became paradox that I could no longer be part of.
yeah. So
So
after 15 years, this feeling creeps in that you want to be doing something else. What did you go through to be in a position to extract yourself?
Well, actually, I'm going to have to go back because actually, the 15 years, I went to London after 7, 8 years. Principally, a very Dick Whittington thing to try and get out teaching.
So you're
Very
looking
quickly
for
got sucked.
the paths that were paved with gold.
Yeah, I was just like, well, I'll go to London, still don't know what I want to do. And I thought if I put myself in the capital, the biggest economic centre in the UK, where there's so much going on, somehow by osmosis, I'll find my stream. Um, so that's what I did, and basically just up left, took a sabbatical, didn't go back in the end, but went to London, and actually two things happened there. One is I ended up in supply teaching, particularly in primary schools. So I actually did 2, 3 years in primary schools, and I thought, oh, maybe this is where I should be. Primary's going to be a bit more play orientated, creative orientated. Found it to be exactly the opposite, actually.
Right.
So yeah, I was it was that was really found that very very challenging actually. And slightly depressing actually. I was just like, actually, this is more rigid and more structured than secondary, in fact. But did 3 years there, didn't enjoy that. But at the same time, met my wife or ex-wife, and she was going to be a teacher. So I kind of went to London to get out teaching, sucked back in, did 3 years in primary. He qualified. We did a couple of years in London together, both teaching in primary, and then the job came up in Zambia, looking for secondary and primary teachers for a mining company that was setting up a school company
When
that
you say
was
it came up, like,
yeah. Okay,
how
okay.
does that
So
happen?
yeah, so it's a bit of a weird one. So my ex actually did as she did the PGC in London, and part of their they had to do a placement which was not in this traditional. She's a primary teacher, but she had to do it outside of primary teaching, and she managed to get a placement in Uganda. So she ended up going to Uganda for 12 weeks or whatever it was. So she came back and had that experience of Africa. We started teaching, and then my brother-in-law, again, it's funny how life sometimes works out. My brother-in-law had set up he'd been working in the charity sector for years, and he kind of ended up working for some schools in Africa, charity setting up schools in Africa. He went and ended up being a consultant, and so this company in Africa was like, "Right, we're looking for an educational consultant who can help us recruit teachers." Of course, he's got a brother-in-law um, who's a teacher. He's like, "Would you be interested in applying for this role, Jules?" I was like, "Absolutely would." So,
How cool.
yeah, went to applied for it, went to the interview process. It was great, actually. I just had to turn up in the school. They'd used a school, I think, in Slough or somewhere, I think, and taught this lesson in a strange school to this strange class where not even the interviewers knew the class. And at the end, got a round of applause from the kids. I was like, brilliant. So I got that
Wow.
job, and yeah, ended up in Africa, back into secondary teaching because I was like, okay. But at this point, I was like, maybe this satisfaction is not with my career; it's maybe with the environment. So maybe go and take myself to a new environment, and
Hmm.
turned up in northern Zambia, just away from the Congolese border, at this mining company, in a mine in a place called Solwezi, about 14 hours drive from the capital city, middle of nowhere, and started setting up schools. And when we arrived, there wasn't a stone in the ground at that point, or a brick in the ground. Yeah, it was all yet to be built, and it was amazing because there was me turning up. And actually, it was two sets of schools. One was a set of schools for the local Zambian children that worked for the mine or whose parents worked for the mine. And that's what I'd applied for. But very quickly, the head of the international school, there was an international school being set up for the international mining community, the Brits, the South Africans, the Australians, and so on, who were working in the kind of managerial levels. Um, he took a shine to me. He's like, I think you'd be a great boarding master, and basically offered me a really nice house with a view across this game park and take a pay packet, and I ended up doing that for 3 years,
So
setting
your
up boarding
theory
houses.
of, or your hypothesis, let's say, of, well, maybe teaching is for me, but maybe I'm just in the right environment. Did that go, which way did it prove?
It actually put me into teaching, and I was like, actually, I was loving it. I was
Mm.
suddenly, I was by this point, I was in management as well. And the thing that I found so hard in English schools of being micromanaged, having to, spend hours just doing mindless administrative tasks, kind of gone. And I was there kind of going, right, we've got all these kids because we were up in the northern part of Zambia. The capital city is the main relation center in Zambia, and it's 14 hours drive away. So we've got, and that's where we're trying to recruit from as well as the local mine kids. It's like we need a bigger population to serve this school. And of course, trying to encourage parents to kind of send their kids to a school that's 14 hours drive away across potholed roads and so on is pretty tough. So there's me going, right, we're going to have to go and talk to airlines and see if I can arrange charter flights to get kids up and down from the capital city. So that's what I ended up doing. I ended up kind of having a lot of fun designing the curriculum, being part of the, and again, for me, and the pastoral element was always the key part for me anyway, being kind of part of the pastoral kind of development process. I was a boarding house master. The first boarding houses we had were awful because they were designed by Zimbabweans who'd kind of that whole thing of, well, it was good enough for me, it'd be good
Mm.
enough for kids today. So they'd all lived in communal boarding houses, and we lived in an area of cerebral malaria. So if it gets malaria, it will spread quickly, but it's potentially fatal.
Yeah.
And of course, in shared boarding rooms, so there's no walls between rooms, it just spread like wildfire, and it was just really badly designed. So I ended up just exploring how a boarding house should look, and with making an argument for it, like room goes here, here's why six the prefects are here and here and here. We separate the year groups, and so we can have different bedtime, all that stuff.
And
My
were
my
you
my
still
plan,
teaching while you're organizing
yes,
flights and organizing boarding houses and all of this? So you're teaching as well. So you're a
yes,
teacher plus plus plus, basically.
yes,
Okay.
yes. And to be fair, I mean, my teaching load was lighter than it would have been in the UK. I wasn't I had a fairly substantial teaching load. I was covering all of history across all the years to start off with. But again, I had autonomy. And actually, that is so important. I mean, I was motivated and I was impassioned, and I can make things happen. And that to me was actually really powerful. So I had no problem working the extra hours or
Yeah.
doing things because I knew it was having an impact. It was having a really positive impact.
I love asking hypothetical questions, and this
Yes.
might be an impossible question to answer, but I'm curious to know what you think would happen if the UK education system did sort of the opposite of what seems to be happening now, that it's very micromanaged and it's very much, you need to dot the T's and not dot the T's, you need to cross the
Oh,
T's
the
and dot
eyes,
the
cross the
I's,
T's. Yeah.
but everything needs to happen within these boxes, so to speak. What would happen if you suddenly said to teachers, you've got autonomy, you can teach what you think is important to your class and teach it in a way that you think your students are most likely to engage with the subject? What do you think would happen?
I think educational outcomes would rocket. I think you'd have a huge improvement in behavior, in attendance. I think you'd have a better retention of teachers. I think you'd have better outcomes in, yeah, across the board. Um, and it's one of the things that I practice in my company. It's one of the things that I've seen in great schools as well. Is I mean, for me, the key thing, I was always of the attitude of as a teacher, I'm accountable and responsible for the results I get and the engagement of my students. And actually, there's several markers for that, isn't there? There's kind of obviously exam results. There's how the kids feel. There's how the parents feel. And all that sort of stuff. And I was always very much like, if I'm failing, intervene, step in,
Yeah,
give me support, give me direction,
yeah,
help me scaffold to improve. If I'm not, just give me those outcomes.
yeah,
Tell me what I need to do and give me the space to do it, and I'll go and deliver it. And that is something I've again, where I am now, and as a leader and a manager myself, it's something I've learnt from my the opposite actually in the teaching environment, where everything was micromanaged, everything's very patronized, and I always found that difficult. It's infantilizing,
mm,
and actually, what you do is you limit outcomes, you crush innovation, you crush inspiration,
yeah,
and you end up with mediocrity.
yeah,
Um, and that's, I think, a problem. I think not just in education, but across a lot of public sector
yeah. I totally agree.
works, and also a lot of private sector
Yeah.
businesses as well.
There's
People,
that
yeah,
level of trust doesn't exist. I see that
yes,
in a lot of leadership that, the thought of giving their staff autonomy, certain things,
yes,
scares the living daylight out of a lot of leadership because
yes,
they're like, well, then, what would happen? Oh my God,
yeah,
and I always think as long as you have shared the organization's vision. You've shared
yeah,
it in a way that inspires everybody, and everybody knows what's exactly like you said. You know what's expected of you, and as long as you get on with it and get that result, I don't care how you achieve that
yeah,
result. I,
yes,
I just want you to achieve, I want the kids to be
yeah,
happy. I want them to learn this, this, and this, and that's it, or whatever the
yes,
outcome
yeah,
is. Um, It would be, and there are definitely schools. I have come across schools where that does happen, where leadership is very encouraging. They share the vision, they share their passion for the vision, and people buy
Yes.
into that. And then they're told, get on with it. And
Yeah.
also give me your ideas of how you think we can achieve that collectively. There's one head
Yeah.
teacher in particular that she said to me, "Oh, I've got the best staff in the world." But I'm like, but maybe you do, but probably it's because you've created a culture where people feel confident to give you their ideas. She said, "Oh, they come to work every morning and they tell me how they think we could improve things and la la la." I'm like, but you've created a culture where you are actively encouraging people to do that. There are loads of organizations, schools and otherwise, where that's not encouraged, where you're told this is how
Yes.
we do things
Yes.
and if you don't like it, then there's the door.
Yes, and it's kind of fun because I've had the privilege of being both as a company. I mean, that's my attitude. I've learned from education. I've gone when I have my business. One of the motivators for me having my business going, I don't work in an organization like that anymore. So I'm going to create an
Yeah,
organization.
how also.
Um, but I mean, I see that all the time. I mean, I have an amazing team. And again, they're incredibly talented, and that's one of the reasons why I choose them. But also for me, I just see their passion, their capability, and their creativity. And I'm like, my job is to support you, to give you the space to fly, and you'll do amazing things. And they do, like our website, I've got a guy who's 26 now. I took him on in lockdown as a starter. Um, when we were doing that program, 'cause I had a business that had no money and it wasn't trading, and I brought him on. And he's, like he'll say, "Oh, Jules, I've changed the website here and here, blah blah blah." And of course, there's always a conversation about what we're trying to do and what the goals are.
Yeah,
So that kind of big strategic view
yeah,
is shared.
yeah.
And he'll just kind of blow my mind all the time. Or my colleague Sarah, who's our head of marketing, I've had for last year. I mean, she's just our social media tools is just not there, and I'm awful at that. So I'm taking this. I'm like, great, just do what you need to do. And again, it's just the traction is just
Yeah.
shooting up, and she's just taking great stuff. And also, what's important to me is like I wouldn't know to ask her to do that.
Mm.
I'm not all knowing. I don't have that insight. I don't have that breadth of knowledge or experience or awareness to kind of pinpoint that stuff. So actually, if you have a top-down leadership where the leadership is kind of determining everything, it's kind of limited to one person's perspective and brain, and I'm like, that
Yes,
is awful.
totally,
Um,
totally.
so I'm like, actually, yeah, it needs to be the other way around.
And also, as an employee, how cool is it if your leader, your manager says to you, I totally trust you to do a really good job. This is
Yeah,
what I wanted to look like, but really,
yes,
I trust you to deliver something really awesome. Gosh, that's a
yes,
great reputation to live up to, isn't it? That I can
yes,
produce something really awesome. I love that.
yes,
But I've just realized that we've gone into talking about culture and leadership and all of
yes,
this. And we haven't
yes.
actually talked about how you went from teaching to what you're doing now, and we haven't talked about what you are doing now. So do you want to
Sure.
give
Okay.
us a
So yes, yes. So I was in Zambia for 3 years, had an amazing time, and then our contracts came up for renewal. And actually, one of the things about being in Zambia is the again leadership of the company was awful, absolutely awful. Um, and there was that choice again where I had a lot of space because it was chaotic, and in that space I could have a lot of autonomy to kind of make change, and the school leadership was good. Um, the actual company leadership was awful, that they mistreated people and things like that. And also working in Zambia, I loved it. I've left a bit of my heart in Africa, and I every day I miss it.
Mm.
Um, it's just
Have
a
you been
beautiful
back since?
place. I've been not to the school because it's a bit too remote, but my partner is she grew up in South Africa,
Hey.
and which is one of my favorite places in the world, and Cape Town is one of my favorite places in the world. Her dad and stepmom lived down there, so it's one of the reasons why I think I was attracted to it at first. Like, oh, you've got connections to Sub-Saharan Africa. This is brilliant. So we
There's
went
an
back a few
ulterior
years ago.
motive to this relationship.
Yes, yeah, there was.
And if she
So
didn't know, she knows now.
he does. No, she knew it from the very beginning. I was very disappointed she didn't have a South African accent actually when I first met her. She's British. Uh, but yeah, I'd done 3 years there, and one of the things about being in, and there's issues in every country you live in, isn't there? But one of the things is there is a level of racism. Um, you there's also a level of misogyny, and I find both of those things. Again, part of my role was just to show and being a role model, just
Yeah.
not being that really. But after 3 years, you kind of get to a point where it's going to start driving you crazy, which it started to do. Like some of the injustice and some of the prejudice and so on. And I was very scared either that I'd go crazy trying to fight it or I'd normalize it. And I was like, I don't do either of those two things. So maybe it's time to look for another role. And actually, we settled being an expats for the next few years. So I kind of come to that conclusion. Actually, I'm quite enjoying teaching. Maybe it's about it's the environment. However, we came back to the UK, and my ex wanted to be closer to family. Her parents convinced her that we should stay in the UK. And of course, once that decision was made, and I was like, and again, I was just like, well, if you're happy, I'm happy.
Hmm.
So let's stay in the UK. But I did say, I can't stay in teaching. I can't having tasted the forbidden fruits of being allowed to kind of actually make a difference, have that space and come back to being micromanaged, infantilized, overworked, very little gratitude. I'm just not doing it. And that set off another crisis for me, really, which was what do I do next? Again, still haven't worked out what I want to do with my life. Anyway, we did have 10 weeks to go traveling in South America. So we are in Peru, in Cusco, just close to Machu Picchu, which has always been on my bucket list. And I remember just sitting down one day and thinking, actually, and before this, actually, going back a few weeks before, I started to realize that obviously we are coming back to the UK. I started thinking, well, actually, if I don't know what to do, let's look at this another way. So I made 3 lists. I thought, what are the things that I love? What are the things I'm passionate about? Education being one of them, travel another, music. There's a whole list of things that I really care about. What are the things I'm good at as a person coming into the workplace? What's my skill sets? What are the things that I enjoy? What are the things I don't enjoy? Um, and then I thought made a list about kind of work environment. What kind of things do I enjoy in a work environment? What kind of things do I not? And actually, so for example, that last section, I realized actually one of the things about teaching I'd struggled with is actually it's too routine in some ways for me. Like I am somebody we all need a bit of routine, some people more than others. I find it really difficult actually. If I'm being told to be up at 9 to 5 job for me is actually a bit of a battle. I quite like having a bit of spontaneity and not knowing exactly what my day's going to look like and reacting on the fly, things like that. So I thought maybe I'll have a job that's going to be a bit more kind of open ended, autonomous, maybe freewheeling. So I had these 3 lists, and I was sitting in Cusco, um, having a lovely meal in the middle of Cusco, and I suddenly realized actually I love to travel. What I've realized about travel is I go for the big stuff. It's never the big stuff that has the impact. We decided we're coming back to the Bath area, which is where I'd lived for years before we moved off to London and Africa. And actually, I want to share it in a way that if I'm traveling, the kind of traveling that I'd be looking for, the kind of experiences I'd be looking for, which is actually, yeah, you see the big stuff, but really it's all about the relationships, the places that wouldn't have anticipated, those moments of solitude, reflection, and having lived here for years and years and to the place inside out with walks, driving down country lanes for years, I was just like, I can suddenly there's a clarity. I can see how I can do this
Did it come to
and
you
how it would
very
work.
suddenly?
Yeah, it was almost quite inspirational. I was suddenly like, I could be a tour guide, but I don't want to be because the thing is again, having been in South America, I'm traveling and I'm dealing with tour guides all the time, and some of them are brilliant, some of them are awful. And the ones that are awful, actually, it's because there's no passion there, there's no relationship. Um, and it's just kind of repeating the same old stuff, and it's all about how much can you spew out and facts and things like that. And I'm like, that's not it.
Literally just
Uh,
regurgitating stuff.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And there was, it's all about, and what I realized, it's all about them. And actually, for me, it's not about me at all. It's about actually, I want you to kind of dive deep into our culture, our history, and that's what I'm looking for when I go abroad. And I was like, I could do that at home. And actually, if I'm going to kind of, when we're thinking about having a family at the time, I thought if I'm not going to travel, I can travel vicariously. I can meet people that come in this way. Because that's one of the things I really love about traveling as well is connecting people from different
Yeah.
places and cultures and that exchange of perspective and thoughts and ideas is just so stimulating and enriching to me. And I thought, well, actually, I'm going to get that if I'm a tour guide. Um, so I decided to set up my own tour company based in Bath, because again, big destination for and I thought, actually, I'm going to take all these tourists that stay in Bath out into the local area because it is spectacular here. And again, having traveled all over the world and seen some amazing places, I kind of feel that the space that we occupy is pretty thrilling and
Pretty
unique.
awesome. I mean, I went to
Yeah,
university in Bath, so Bath has a very, very
yes,
special place in my heart. And
yes,
my husband I don't know if he loves it when we go to Bath because there's a memory on every corner. I'm like, oh, so and so threw up on that corner, and so I walked into a lamppost here, and
Yes,
this is where this is really awful, but this is what you do when you're a student. So, and I didn't
yes,
do it. I
exactly.
hasten to add, one of my friends, posted a chip pitter through a post box
Excellent. Yeah, that's
in
the
the
kind of
middle of
stuff
Bath.
students
But
do.
that's the sort of thing that it's kind of part of your job description, isn't it, when you're a student
It
to do
is. It's a rites of
crazy things?
passage, isn't it? You're an absolute moron when you're a student because you think you're grown up and you're absolutely not. And you're doing dumb stuff and you think it's really clever. And then later
Yeah.
on, you're like, oh, but that's the growth.
Yeah,
There's the journey.
totally. Totally. So yeah, but yes, to go back to yes, Bath is anybody who's listening who hasn't been to Bath, please go. And if you really want a very in-depth, but I think you're really onto something because I think you can go traveling. You can have two very different experiences based on the people you meet, the things you do, and that can make or break any trip. And so I think what you're now doing, it can only make it an experience because you get under the skin. You can go to Bath and you
Yes.
can have a wander around and you can go in the shops and you can sit in a lovely cafe and you can have a perfectly wonderful time. But I think, and I've not been on one of your tours, so I'm totally
Yes, you'll
making
have to come at some point,
assumptions
Yesim.
here based on the conversations that we've had. We've known each other for years now, but based on the conversations we've had and what I know of you and your passion of the area, I think you would take that experience to a whole new level because you're sharing stories of Bath that you just wouldn't have a clue wandering around. I
Yeah,
mean, I'm sure I
you're
don't
absolutely
know
right.
a lot of
And
them.
well, and actually, it comes back to my teaching days. I used to
Yeah.
kind of, because I was a history teacher, my whole attitude as a teacher is I've got a group of 30 kids in front of me, 28, whatever it is. They're learning about something that's not happened in their lifetime, but decades, possibly hundreds of years ago. How do I make this meaningful?
Yeah. Why should
And
I
that's the
care about
critical one.
that?
Yeah, why should they care? Exactly.
Yeah.
And as a teacher, you're kind of, I create a lesson plan, which is all about taking kids on a journey. I want them to kind of get to some kind of conclusion awareness, but I can't do it for them. They have to do that. So all I'm doing is becoming the facilitator. I'm giving those opportunities, those experiences for them to connect and engage with that. And I've literally brought my approach to lesson planning to my approach to tour planning. Down to the point where, for example, with lessons, you'd have things like, oh, this might be an individual task, this might be a shared task, this might be a group discussion. You have these different kind of phases because otherwise it becomes very samey
Yes. And
um,
boring.
and boring. And
Yeah.
so on our tours, I'm always about meaning. So if I'm going to include something in a tour, I'm like, for example, a beautiful, the Cotswolds, for example, we do a tour to the Cotswolds, and I think again, it's completely unique because people said to me, "Well, you've got to go to the Cotswolds, Jules," and I was like, "I don't just want to go to all the kind of touristy places. Isn't this lovely? Take some snap." Again, it's very one-dimensional. Not,
Mm.
I also knew I'm going to be bored within minutes if I was doing that. In a couple of years' time, I'll be out again because it just doesn't have much meaning to me. So I was like, "What's a compelling story? Where can I take them?" So actually, we include on that tour one of the most important towns in English history, which no one's ever heard of. I'm not even going to mention it now. You have to come on the tour if you want to come. But
Oh.
it's at the heart of the birth of England's story. Like, where does England come from? And one of the things that we don't know, and I didn't know actually as a history teacher, is the story of England. We kind of do the Romans and we do 1066. We miss out 600 years of really where England, Scotland, Wales, Europe is birthed. Um, and so we go to this town where this great saint who Christianized the Saxons, one of the greatest centers of pilgrimage and learning in the Saxon period, um, is buried. We the king who ended up unifying England and defeating the Vikings and unifying the Mercians and the Saxons and the Angles, all that kind of stuff. He's buried there. And of course, I can't just go, oh, this is a really lovely town, and this is a really ancient abbey, and oh, there's two really important people here because it's kind of a bit superficial. So we sit down and we explore that story, and again, my history teacher goes, you're not going to understand if I just start talking about these different groups or kingdoms just off the off. You've got nothing to hang that to. So let's go back to the Romans. So we end up
Yeah.
having a discussion where we're talking from the Romans. So the Romans leave, what happens next, and it kind of what we call the Dark Ages, and actually putting the pieces together so that when you're walking around this town, you're now kind of going, okay, I'm standing here in 2025. I really understand its significance in 672. Or
Yes.
I'm looking at this abbey, and suddenly I can imagine how in the 700s, 800s, this was a place where pilgrims were flocking. The monks would, of course, have been kind of bringing them in here. You've had this great Saintbury, this great. Suddenly, there's meaning and there's significance.
Yeah.
And that's the magic
Yeah.
for me.
I couldn't agree
That
more. How
yeah,
exciting. I think what you're doing is really cool. I genuinely, I just think it just takes the experience to a whole new level. And I
yes,
think because you tell it with so much passion, I can imagine that people can't help but get swept up in that passion for the history
yes.
of a place. So, do you tend to attract customers who are naturally very interested in history, or are they just, I want to say average tourists, but tourists that aren't necessarily interested in the history, but then you, I don't know, you
We do yes,
surprise
we
them.
kind of. It's well, this is one of the things that, for example, again, like having come out from out of the industry into this industry and having a very clear vision of what I want to do and how I want to do it. Again, I think it's made us kind of pioneering without, I haven't set out to go, how can I disrupt this industry? There's all people talk about you have to be a disruptor. And like I haven't really done that. I'm just like, this is what I want to do because I think it's a better experience.
Yeah.
Um, and actually, I think we are disrupted both in the experience we provide, but again, back to our culture. To me, it's all like how do you, it's meaningful. Well, how do you do this well? Because actually, what's the point otherwise? And as for our customers, I think we don't share our itineraries. Like we'll have a tour, for example, called Stonehenge and Secret England, and I'm like, we share the general experience you're going to have. Like you're going to be seeing some fascinating places, kind of deep in the heart of English countryside, with places which have a really interesting story to tell. But we don't say more than that because firstly, I want people to arrive at these places and have that. Again, I'm trying to take people on an emotional journey as well as a physical one. And it's like having a film where somebody tells you, "Oh, there's an amazing thriller, right? And this is what happens, and then this," and you kind of get the spoiler, and it kind of removes some of that enjoyment. Exactly the same with touring. And I think if you're somebody that's like, "I want to go here, 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 here," you're automatically going to kind of step out of that and go, "Nope, not for me." You're going to have to want to be pretty trusting and inquisitive to buy into that. Um, and I think again, it's just about our marketing. I mean, one of the things that I'm a big believer in is again coming from a non-business background is be really clear. Try and be as clear as you possibly can about what you do because you'll get a lot of that way you'll better attract the people who you do want, but also those people that aren't the right fit will also automatically go, not for me. It won't speak
Mm.
to them. Um, so, and that's a perennial battle. I mean, when I started, people were saying to me, "You're starting a business in an industry you've never worked in, taking people you've never met." And my whole thing was actually going to places that you wouldn't know to ask for. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how's that going to work? And it has been
How
a bit of
did
a
you
battle.
organize your first ever tour? Because I think, let's say a teacher's listening to this and they're thinking,
Yeah.
oh, that would be so cool. I'd love to run my own business. Wouldn't have a clue where to start. Where did you start?
Where did I start? It was it was terrifying. Because I decided I'm going to start a business with no industry experience, and I thought first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a business. So I got my limited business set up. Went to Business West
That's where we
at the
met.
time, which is where we met
Hmm.
exactly, and got myself a business advisor says I want to do this. Um, Took out a very small loan initially because he said, well, to access our services, you need to have a loan.
Yeah.
um, so I did that,
Was that
and
Andrew Mercer?
that was Andrew Mercer.
Yeah. Yeah. There you go.
Yes. Um, and I actually had a very clear idea again what I wanted to do. I mean, my whole thing was I need a website. I'm going to be picking up people in Bath. I'm going to have shared tours, which are so itineraried, scheduled. I'll get leaflets out, get those designed. I'll get a website up. And actually, my whole goal was advisor. I will need reviews because that's what, again, as a regular traveler myself, an awful lot of my decision making comes through TripAdvisor and me
Mm.
researching. So it's like, get on there, get reviews up, and off we go. So that's what I did. And I also always had a vision of it was I was like, I want to change the industry a little bit because I think it's so generic and uninspiring. So I always had this kind of ambition and and actually that was quite far reaching. So my goal has always been to kind of get a model 1.0 working in Bath and in beyond Bath. And then actually scale someone in beyond Oxford and in beyond Southampton. And I started in 2017, so it's been a long time in coming, especially with COVID in the middle.
Yeah.
But I've always had that kind of vision of this is where it could go. So I've always had that in the back of my mind. And again, I'm not making decisions with that at the forefront. I'm just like, I need to work on what I need to do now. But everything I do always has that bigger goal in mind. So, for example, when I started my business, I didn't just call itself, for example, Jules's Tours. I'm like, it's too limited. I want a name which can be expanded if I needed to be, and I've got brands that I can expand if needed to be, and I had
I
a kind
think
of
this is
clear
your
idea of that.
opportunity to give it a plug.
So okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, so in and beyond Bath, which I originally started as a roundabout Bath. Again, it was all about kind of being in Bath and connect to the local area. And one of the things I want to do is make Bath a hub. My thing is to actually spend this time traveling from location to location, spend longer in one location, and really connect with that area. And so that's what we do, and we create very what I call carefully curated signature tours, which kind of like I kind of think it's like a tasting menu for a chef. It's a very carefully designed journey into a local area, which combines a must see, hence, for example, Stonehenge, which that's the people want to see with, I think, the best food, the best like photographic locations, the best kind of journey through the countryside. Everything's just very carefully designed
Mm.
and multiple narrative points. So, for example, on the Stonehenge tour, obviously Stonehenge is prehistoric, but we see some beautiful medieval villages. One which I think has a particular resonance with World War One. One of my great literary heroes and a World War One poet is buried in this village's church. And so for me, there's this point where we look at World War One and the impact on Britain and society and that poet. So you're kind of ostensibly seeing British countryside, but there's something deeper which I think has a
To it.
human resonance.
Mm.
And that's what we do. And I'd love to do one in other places which I think again have fascinating centres but have a lot around them.
Yeah.
Oxford's a great example.
Yeah. There's no shortage of
No,
history in this
no,
country, is there? So
no.
it's yeah, the world's your oyster, so to speak.
We are. And what's great about the UK as well is there's so much everywhere. I mean, having traveled abroad, sometimes, you stay at one place and you want to go and see an attraction, you've got to travel an hour and a half to something that's okay, might be great, might not
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Whereas for us, it's everywhere, history, countryside, gardens, houses,
Yeah.
industrial
In a very
areas.
small area,
Yeah,
really. Mm.
yeah. It's just scattered.
Mm.
It's like somebody's taken a treasure chest and just thrown all its contents on the ground. And
So
I feel
true.
that's what traveling in the UK is like compared
Yeah.
to much of the world. And again,
Yeah.
um, that's my thing. It's like you don't need to kind of go to Manchester, to Liverpool, to York, to Bath, to Oxford to get a sense of how much we have.
Yeah.
You can spend yourself in one space and really connect with it.
Definitely. What advice would you give to somebody that is in the position that you were in a few years ago when you're still in your teaching job, but you are thinking that it might not be what you want to do going forward, but I mean, you said it was really terrifying. What would you say to somebody that's currently in that situation?
It's a really good question. My advice would be start thinking early. I mean, one of the things that I'm a big believer in, and have become even more so as I've got older, is think early, act late. And so what I tend to do is I kind of go, oh, here's something that I need to think about. I'm now going to, it's now come to a conscious thought. I'm now going to put it into my subconscious and just let either situation or ideas just kind of percolate,
Hmm.
um, or for new information to come in. And so that when I have to be at a point of making decisions, I know what I'm doing. It becomes actually, there's no decision to make made. I actually feel I make very few decisions nowadays. I just have intentions and they then kind of self fulfill almost, which is a bit
No, it's a
woo
much
woo.
easier way of going through life, isn't it?
Yes.
To let
Yeah.
it
Um,
percolate, let it marinate, and
yes.
then exactly like you said, have that intention, set it out there, put it out there,
Yeah.
and then kind of, I was going to say wait for it to happen. Yes, wait for it to happen, but take small actions every day that are going to
Yes.
bring you closer to it.
Yes,
Mm.
and let go of the specifics. Actually, I mean,
Mm.
there's two things I think that I think people need to be really careful of. I think one is know what your limits and boundaries are. I mean, I could take a huge risk because I didn't have kids and I didn't have a mortgage, so I could literally kind of come in and go, I'm going to start a business,
Yeah,
uh, and because I didn't have the responsibility. I mean, if I was doing it now, my process and my decision making might be very different.
yeah.
So just be really, really honest with yourself about what's important to you and then start planning and don't be too specific. So, for example, when I started my journey away from teaching, I was thinking about careers, like what career should I go? What should I retrain in? And what job can I bring these skills to? And actually, I think that wasn't particularly helpful. I didn't know. No. So I moved to the bigger picture. Like, what are the things I'm going to enjoy? what kind of environment would I like to work in?
So important.
Yes,
Mm.
and kind of skills would I like to be deploying? And actually, the opportunities come through without, and they're not the things that I'd have had in my head. And actually, a great example of this for me actually is in lockdown. So I was DJing a radio bath, and another DJ came in, started coming in after us on a Friday night, and we became very good friends very quickly. He's one of my best friends now, and he's working in recruitment, and my business was on its knees. I mean, I started 2017. 2020 was the turnover year. Of course, COVID hit, and so it went back down to nothing, and just really hard period of time. I mean, it has been a battle. Um, but he said to me, Jules, do you know what? Why don't you come and do some recruiting with me? He's working at C level recruiting, particularly with Americans, and again, love Americans. Fun, very easy to get on with. Um, and he was working in an area called the BPO industry, the business process outsourcing industry. So if you ever phone Apple or Amazon, you'll get someone on the other line. They work for a company that's not Apple or Amazon. That's obviously doing that service for them. That's the BPO industry. Never worked in that space at all, but I did know that I love talking to people. I've got to the point now where I can freewheel a little bit and I can make things happen. I can see the fit as well. So what does the client need? What does the candidate need? Would that be a good fit? And I ended up working in recruiting for several years. Well, year and a bit until my business started taking off again. Um, but I really enjoyed it. Worked in a great environment, great team, and actually it was lovely because actually I kind of feel I was working on the other side of the fence. I was an employee working for somebody I think who shares the same values that I do as a business owner, and it was great because I got to sit inside. Do you know what I mean? I kind of got to sit in the carriage
Yeah,
instead of being the person driving the horse.
yeah.
And
Which
go,
is
yeah,
quite
no, this
nice
is right.
sometimes, I think, especially
Yeah,
when you've been in charge for a little while, to actually
yeah,
then sit back and let somebody else be in charge and almost be the observer is quite a nice feeling
yes.
sometimes, isn't it? It takes the pressure
And it
off a
was
little bit.
it it does, and but also it was just great for me to kind of go, no, my values are right, my approach as a
Yeah,
leader are right, like because on the other side, I'm being an employee experiencing it,
yeah.
and it was a reinforcer for me, and actually I got to a point where I could have continued with that and probably been earning a six-figure salary by now. In fact, I was really good at it, and then COVID shut down, and I was like, well, do I follow this thing that I've kind of spent several years now building that I've got a lot of heart in, or do I go with the money? And actually, for me, it wasn't decision. It was I knew what I had to do, and it's been a hard couple of years again because all my money's going back to paying COVID loans, startup loans, cost of living, insurance has shot up. I've got a team that's growing. I'm having to pay for training, and of course, I'm the last one to eat. Um,
It's
but I
often the
wouldn't
way
change it.
people don't see that. I think when people see a business owner, particularly when you're employing other people, I
Yeah.
think people just assume that you're the top dog and you're earning much more than everybody
Yes.
else. And very often it's not the case. But
No.
but but you are building something that has so much value, and you're employing how many people now, Jules?
So what I call my kind of my leadership teams for who are
Hmm.
looking for office, ops, marketing, development, content. And then I've got six driver guides currently, and I think four walking guides. So that that's going to grow.
Yeah,
But you're absolutely right. For me, it's like actually I can take the pain, um, and I put myself in a stress position because I can see an outcome which is bigger than that. So yeah, I have paid myself incredibly little over the last 6 7 years, but I've got very comfortable with the discomfort.
yeah,
Um, And again, that to me is growth. I'm like, we're either my one of my mottos is we're either learning or we're winning.
totally.
Um,
Yeah,
and my attitude right now is there's still a lot of learning to do, and
yeah. You're learning
there
and
will come a
winning.
point. Yes, I am actually learning and winning. You're absolutely right. I am learning and winning. I mean, I am so proud of what we do. I'm so proud of my team. I'm so proud of what we've achieved
Yeah.
and what we continue to achieve.
And so you should be. I think what you've created is really very pride worthy. I think,
Thank you.
yeah, I think anybody that was running a business like yours would feel incredibly proud. So it's nice
Oh, thank you.
that you see it that way because I do come across business owners who are very hard on themselves and have achieved a huge amount and still don't ever stop to give themselves a pat on the back or acknowledge the fact that they've created something from nothing that other
Yes.
people talk about but are too scared to try. So I think it's really nice that you do feel proud of what you've achieved, and so you should for sure. Can I ask you what your definition of success is now? And I always ask this of my guests. I'm always curious. The answers vary just so much. Um, but I'm also curious to know, so apart from what your definition is today, I'd love to know how it's changed from, let's say, 10 years ago or 20 years ago.
That's a great question. That's a really good question, and actually a very profound one, I think. What is my definition of success? Success now? It's entirely internal. Am I being true to my own core, my own integrity? Am I acting in a way that makes me feel proud of myself and who I am? And every day, little by little, am I letting go? Because I kind of funny. I broke up with my ex just before COVID happened, and that was a profoundly horrific experience, but also a profoundly changing experience for me. And I went from being an arts atheist to somebody who I think is much more spiritual now. And what that means for me is I just there's a recognition for me that we're all connected. Um, and for me, it's coming back, letting go of all of the conditioning, all of the trauma, um, which all of us experience to a greater or lesser extent.
For sure.
And am I letting more of that go every day and enjoying what is? Um, every single bit of it, including the stuff that's not particularly comfortable, including the stuff that's not particularly fun or particularly exciting. Am I enjoying every single bit? Because to me, that's my profound realization about life. It's not about getting to something. It is, and it's a bit of a cliche. It's the journey itself.
Yeah.
That's the important bit. So, am I enjoying? I hope that I'm going to end up being financially solvent again at some point in the future, and actually be able to enjoy the value, the proceeds of that. But it's not. That's not the markings of a success or failure to me. It's am I doing the best by myself and others right now in this moment?
What
Um,
would let's say the business suddenly becomes incredibly profitable and you can take out £1 million a year from the business. What are the sorts of things that you would spend the money on?
the biggest thing. So I went from being a bachelor, so I broke up with my ex, and then basically from 2018 to 2022, I've been essentially single. Had a couple of fun relationships as well, actually, and quite powerful relationships, but I've not had any responsibilities. I met my partner in September 2022, and we moved in together last July. So I now have a 7 and 8 year old, and we've just got two dogs in November. So I now have 7 month old dogs, two seven
Wow.
month old dogs. So I've kind of gone from kind of Mr. Free and Single to Mr. Family, really. Um, and actually, my goal is to keep them. I'd love them to have a rich experience in life. And so, actually, for me, I'd love to take the boys traveling. I'd love to take them to Africa to go safaring. I want to make my business at some point and I don't know what this looks like quite just yet, a cooperative maybe, or the shares for people that have kind of, I'm like, it is moving forwards a pace now. Because I have just such talented people and I want them to be part of that, sharing that success. Um, and if I had £1 million a year, actually, I think a lot of it, I feel that I am empowered and I elevate myself when I elevate others. So if I could then use some of that influence to either empower and elevate others, whether that's in charity, whether that's talking about these things, who knows? Again, I don't worry about that because I'm not there yet. But I should that's what would be important to me. What's not important to me is things like having an expensive car or having an expensive watch. Or 5 years ago, that was part of it. And I mean, actually, I feel like I disavowed myself of that very quickly. I bought my first car age 21, 22, and it was only 6,000, 4,000 pounds at the time. But I was so anxious about somebody tapping it or an engine light coming on or something like that. I suddenly realized, actually, I don't know if I need stuff that's super expensive. But that's, yes. The other thing for me is when I started my business, I wanted it to be successful as soon as it possibly could. Like for me, I attached a lot of my self-worth to me because setting up a business and it being successful. And I was like, again, hugely anxious because I'm trying to make it work and trying to push it along. And I've let go of that actually. And that was partly again was COVID. Just kind of hammering it and me going, here's me trying to make this happen, trying to make all of this work and trying to get this to a particular place that I've got in my head. And actually, I am just this minute part of a universe which is infinitely bigger than I am. And here's me trying to control it or coerce it to try and fit with what my wee little mind thinks it should do and be. And I just started going, actually, I'm just going to enjoy it, sort it. And if I fail, I fail. As long as I've done my best with it, I'll be fine.
Yeah.
Um, and again, I'm learning or winning. And actually, if I'm learning all the time, and let's say my business does fail, I have a huge amount of skills and experience now, which have only happened because of that, which will see me good into whatever's coming next. So don't need to stress it too much. Not that I'm great at that all the time, but you know,
It's
looking at
kind of good to say it out loud because it's a reminder to yourself, isn't it?
yes,
Mm,
yes, and I do. I mean, I have moments. I mean, like this time of year actually is the most challenging time of the year for me because it's I have a seasonal business,
yeah.
and our you know our income drops off at the end of really October into November, a bit in December, and then January, February, March. It's just money piling out of the business, and I'm investing for growth, so money's going out for developmental reasons as well. So I'm just watching the bank account just drain, and I
Mm,
have to kind of just go, it's fine.
yeah.
If it fails, it fails. I don't think it will, but if it does,
And you know it's going to
just
pick up again come March,
yes,
April. Yeah.
yeah.
And
And now it's
making peace
frenetic
with that.
actually.
Mm,
Yeah, and it is, and it's kind of yeah, it's frenetic again. I mean, it hasn't stopped being frenetic for the last 2 years. I thought this year would be a nice, quieter year because I've got a team and I can hand over a bit of responsibility to them, and I have. But of course, actually, it's just I've got more responsibilities coming in
frees up more time
to
to do other things.
do other things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, I think this is going to be another sprint marathon, as I called last year, and I thought I can't do that again, but I'm going to have to.
Yeah.
So here I
That's
am,
it.
but I'm exactly where I should be, and that's fine.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to be bored anytime soon, are you?
No,
No.
no. And I don't live. This is a powerful thing as a teacher. Again, I'm the master of my own destiny. I have that autonomy. I love what I do. I control the environment in which it happens because it's my business, and I'm just happy. I'm happy with that. I'm still broke. I'm still financially having to count pennies all the time and make sacrifices here and there. But as you know, the opportunity here came a job with actually a lot of the other same stuff and a big paycheck, and I still was like, no, for me, I'm exactly where I should be.
The hero's
So
journey, Jules. The hero's journey. Love it.
yeah, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Uh, do you know, I've really enjoyed chatting to you. It's been
thank you.
really inspiring, and I can't wait to see where the business will, if we have this sort of conversation in 10 years' time, what you'll be telling me then. I think it's going to be, this is just the beginning of the journey, isn't it, really?
It
So,
is, and actually, who knows? I think it's going to do remarkable things because I have a remarkable team.
yeah. And you're a remarkable leader. So I
Oh,
think
thank you.
it can only lead to awesome things. Thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, your humor, your everything. It's been absolutely brilliant. You've been such a brilliant guest. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. That's you just made my day. Thank you so much for thank you for such a great interview as well. I think some of the questions you've got asked have really got me thinking, and it's great.
Well, that's my
So well
job. I'm
done.
a master
Yeah.
questioner. That's not even a word. So that's
Oh,
my
yes, it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
Ask
is
the
now.
question. I think that's a CV title, fair. So
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation with Jules and that it's inspired you to maybe make some changes to your career situation. If you did enjoy it, and perhaps while you've been listening, you've thought of other people that might benefit from this conversation or might find it interesting, please do share it with them. This is an independently produced and published podcast, and the only way it still exists and it's growing is through people like you who listen and like it and share it and subscribe. So I really appreciate you listening and I really appreciate you sharing. And if you need help with your big career move, then you might like my book, which is Ready to Quit Your Job. And you can find that on Amazon worldwide. It's already helped hundreds of people to make positive changes to their careers, so you might find it useful too. And if you want to go one step further, I provide one-to-one coaching as well as online programs. So look out for those on yescareercoaching.com. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn. I think that I'm the only Yesim Nicholson in the world, so it should be relatively easy to find me. My first name is spelled Yesim, and it's Nicholson is the surname. Thanks for listening or watching, and I hope that you'll tune in for the next episode soon. Thanks a lot.